I'm going to show you how I do a couple of quick watercolor washes which you might find useful in your journal. I always start by refreshing my paints. I put mine in my palette and let them dry so I can use them wherever I am. This is my old favorite Prang box. It makes me feel like a kid again, so I really enjoy using it. And this is a little sprayer that I got at the discount department of my local Walmart. Oops. And you can also use something like this to re-wet your paints. This is a pipette. Or you can simply take a nice big brush and drop paint in that way. And the point of pre-wetting them is that it refreshes them so they're much easier to pick up and paint with, almost as if they were freshly squeezed. Some people have a little trouble learning how to make a wash, and it's strictly a matter of practice. You just need to transfer enough water. It's good to have more than you think you need so you don't run out in the middle and lose your value or intensity or color. I'm keeping it simple this time and using a single color rather than mixing, because sometimes mixing, when you have to add more, makes a different color. As you can see, I have a nice juicy wash here, and normally you don't need that much for journal work, but we're going to work with it anyway. I'm using a tea bowl for my water, so I have plenty of fresh water. Now, normally, to do a flat wash, you just, well, actually, I would tip this up just a bit so that a bead of water gathers at the bottom of the stroke. See how it's darker here? You just pick that up each time you come down the page. I'm using Fabriano cold press paper. And that's it for a flat wash, except you will probably want to pick up that bead of paint. You can either do that with a brush that you've wiped off on a paper towel, or with the corner of the paper towel itself works fine. And that made a nice flat wash. If you want to make a graded wash, you kind of do the same thing. Let that bead of water gather, but instead of going back in for more paint, you add a little bit of water and still a little bit more water and a little more, and it fades off nicely. Again, you need to wipe your brush and pick up that bead, because it will make a back run, which is not that pretty and not usually something that you want. And see, it's continuing to build up down here because of gravity. Most often in my journals, though, I just use what I call a variegated wash, which I just slap on any old way. I like the effect, I like the spontaneity, and sometimes I like to mix in another color while it's wet. Oops, my battery just died. So it's a good thing I was almost done. We're going to look at a few more watercolor washes. Pretty basic, but you may need them in your journal work. I've already cleaned my palette here, and I'm going to moisten the colors again. Oops, and I'm going to spray all over the place. This is an already dry flat wash that I've done, and I'm going to show you about glazes, sometimes called wet on dry. This is a nice soft blue, so I'm going to see how it works to glaze over it with the red. That makes a very nice lavender color. And if you work quickly, you don't lift the underwash, which is always good. You don't want to muddy it. That makes a bright green coming over it with the yellow. Let's try a more subdued gold tone and see what that does. And it makes a more subtle green. So you can use glazes in a lot of reasons in your journal. Whoa. Okay, oops again. Another wash that we use quite a bit is a wet in wet. So let's play with that. In this case, we put down a fairly wet wash. I'm using the red this time, as you can see. I thought maybe you guys got tired of the usual colors I choose. And while it's still wet, I'm going to come back in with the blue. And you can see it makes a nice soft edge. You might want to lift in places like that because you would possibly get a back run. And if you do this while it's still quite wet, you get really soft edges like this. If you come back in where it started to dry a little bit, this may push the paint back and make a harder edge. And if you let it dry completely, then you're back to the glaze. And very handy. And where might the wet and wet come in handy? Well, let's see if I can quickly do a wee demo here. This is more the kind of snowy gray weather we have had lately. Oops, didn't get that quite mixed well, so I have a little hard edge in there. And let's say that I wanted to suggest bare trees up on a hill. Oops, got in the wrong blue, sorry. Try that again. And I also, again, got in the wrong blue. So I'm just going to come in with some burnt sienna. And what you can do to suggest the trees is take a mechanical pencil and draw right through the wet wash. That bruises your paper and makes it accept the paint more boldly. That's a nice effect.